session is part of our SASW conference, this annual conference we have, and this is navigating your journey as newly qualified social workers. I've got with me Dr. Gillian Ferguson from the SSC, who will be guiding you through the resources that are available on the SSC website. She's actually the mastermind behind that website, I need to say. She will also be able to answer all your questions in regards to the continued professional learning requirements that you might have. We also have the chat box, but I will talk about that in a minute, where you can pop in your questions. So I'm very glad to have Gillian. And following on from that, I will talk a little bit about self-care and well-being, because this is really, really important to get through your first year in this line of job. Yeah, so but before we make a start, just a wee bit of the house rules. So question can be fed in any time, so use that chat box that is available. We are always keen to kind of get a little bit of feedback, want to hear what other questions you may have. We are trying to make some time at the end of the sessions to answer your questions and have a bit of a discussion if you want. But this is, you know, small enough group for all of your questions to be answered. Don't feel that there are any kind of daft questions, because if you have that question, I can assure you that somebody else is interested to hear the answer. So just kind of pop them in and we'll try to kind of get back to that. If not, then we probably kind of, you know, we'll make sure that the answers will be then included in the email that you get after the session, when you also kind of get the slide packs for that. This session will be recorded, so just so that you're aware of that. And please put your microphones on mute unless you're saying something at the end of the session. And if you could also ask you to keep your cameras off for the time of the presentation, so mine and Gillian's, and at the end it would be lovely to see your beautiful faces, because it always kind of makes me feel as if I'm actually in a room with people, which has been such a long time. But obviously, you know, feel free to kind of keep them off as well. But I do like seeing some faces. So I will encourage you once we've kind of got through the presentation, if there's time. Right, but let's dive right into it, and I will hand over to Gillian.
Hi, and it's great to be here and speaking to some people at this time of the day. You've managed to find the time to sort of join us. Karen, I'm just going to use give people a live tour of the new website and hopefully answer the questions about CPL in a moment. So I'm going to share my screen and do that. So what we're going to kind of try and cover is a little bit about, which hopefully you'll get to see this in a minute, and that should be up now, Karen. Yeah, can you see that? Yeah,
I can see that.
That's great. So basically, this is a really new website. It's only gone live in the last few weeks, really. And this is a dedicated website SSC have made that is going alongside a huge national project that's happening just now, that's really about supporting NQSWs in that first year of practice. So what we're hoping is that this will be a place to go into through the front door of, and I'm going to show you where you can get in for your own information on this website and find out anything that you need to know about what you have to do, but also lots and lots of different things that will help you learn and help support your practice across lots of different areas of services and lots of areas of the kind of important parts of learning and development. So lots of times people get really worried about the stuff that they have to do in terms of SSC registration for the continuing professional learning. And fundamentally, we really want you to kind of get back to a focus about thinking about what matters to you as a professional social worker, what's important in terms of your learning for you in respect of that title that you have and that role that you have. And that's fundamentally the most important part of your continuing professional learning. It's not necessarily about what you do in terms of all the things that you can do to learn. It's about what it is that you're learning and how that's really influencing your practice. So we will cover some of the practical bits as well, and I'm going to show you where to find the details about that in the website. But as I say, keep thinking all the time about what are the most important things that you have learned as a social worker so far. And if you think about the things that you've learned that are most important to you, lots of them will not have been learned through going to something like a a course, or they won't have been learned through something that's necessarily formal. Lots of the stuff that's most important about what we've learned has been through other things, a random conversation, watching something, observing something, thinking about something, or just some sort of ethical dilemma that you've experienced in practice. And these sorts of things are sometimes the richest experiences that we've got, that really help us learn about what matters to us and how we can do the very difficult to describe job of a social worker. So basically, this is the website, the front facing of it. Hopefully some people might have even seen it already, but as I say, it's very, very new. And we'll be keeping this up to date alongside all the stuff that's happening with the newly qualified social work project in Scotland. So as you can see on the front page, there's lots of different things. And if I just scroll up, you can find out lots about it right at the top. By just explains all the different things that the website's there to do. So you can have a rummage around this after the session. We'll put the link in the chat box for the website. And I think that what's really great is if you can have a chance to have a look through what the website has on it, have a bit of an explore through it and see how easy you find it to use or not, and let us know if you find there's anything that seems really bizarre in it or anything that you think is very helpful, because we're going to be keeping evolving this throughout the next year to really help support NQSWs in Scotland. So you can find out about it, but I'm just going to go back to the homepage and show you how to get into things. Once you're familiar with the website, you can just search for topics, and you can search for learning resources that are, maybe it's around adult protection or around permanence or resilience or whatever you want to look for. But actually, first of all, if you've never really used it before, we'd suggest that you go in through this front door here, which is just labelled with NQSW, because the website has been designed for 3 different audiences. It's been designed for you first and foremost, but it's also been designed with key material and dedicated material for employers, people that employ NQSWs in Scotland, and that could be very, very diverse organisations. And also there's another huge main section that's for people who are managers and supervisors of NQSWs. So we've got a lot of material about how they can support social workers that they employ, and that's a fundamental part of the national project as well. So if you go in through the front door there, this is really the starting point for everything that you can find that's relevant for NQSWs in Scotland at this point. And we're going to link to any other supporting material, like, for example, that Kareen's going to share later on. And we already linked to some other sources that are already there, including the other sort of SASW professional support service and things that's happening at the moment. So this is the first port of call for yourself as an NQSW. And once you kind of go through the basic information there, you've got another few options for things that you can select here. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about that. And as I say, we can answer some questions today in the chat. And if there's anything that we can't in there, you can follow up with me directly around the specifics of your questions as well. So here's the very first sort of section here, is really the registration requirements. And I'm going to just open that up and show you what that says. So this is really a summary of the information that used to sit very clearly on the main SSSC website. So at the moment, if you go to SSSC website, it will automatically direct you into here if you're looking for anything about newly qualified social workers. And equally, as I say, you can find this through its own web link as well. So you shouldn't go wrong in terms of trying to find SSSC material about NQSWs. But people kind of sometimes worry about this amount of hours of continued professional learning that social workers have to do in their first year of practice. So you have to undertake 24 days or 144 hours of training or learning. And that sometimes gets really confused by being about having to attend things for 144 hours. So as I've mentioned earlier, anything at all that you've learned through can be counted towards learning. So if you think even of the last 2 or 3 days of your work, anything that you've been doing that you think you've learned from, that can count in terms of your continual professional learning. So we would really recommend keep a note as quickly as you can or as early as you can in your first year of registration, because that really mounts up and you can forget some of the really important stuff. So obviously it can include the formal training that you might go on around particular topics, but as equally valuable are all the other things that you'll do that contribute to that development that you have. So that's one of the main things to say. Now, people will have very different information on their registration letters about when they've to submit their record of continual professional learning. And I think different organisations will have different ways of supporting you to do that, but there is a template that you can download, which is available right through this page as well. It's called the NQSW Record of Achievement form, and that can be used, and there's also guidance that helps you think about how to write that. So anything that you need to know more detail about these requirements, please get in touch with us, or as I say, you can ask some of the questions in the chat and I'll try and respond to those during the session as well. Because I want to show you some other stuff as much as talk about these sort of formal requirements. One of the really important things to mention about this that we would always include in a presentation is that you have to include learning or training that's related to your responsibility for the well-being and protection of both adults and children. So depending on where you work, you need to kind of reflect that you've been still learning to be able to understand that sort of responsibility that you have for protection and well-being across the lifespan. So that's something that people sometimes forget to include, or they indeed sort of forget to maybe do a little bit about that during the sort of first year of practice. So some employers will really build that in quite well. What we know is that people have very, very different experiences as social workers in terms of their employment, about what will be put in place through different employers. So that's one of the major aspects of the national project, is to make it more consistent, not to make it the same in every organisation, but to make the level of support and input more consistent, so as people can get the right kinds of support and supervision throughout the country. Because some social workers are working where there are no other social workers, some people will be working where there are huge teams of social workers and very clear induction. So all of that's happening at the moment across Scotland. You might hear a lot more about the national project, and depending on where you're working, you'll hear more or less about it, depending on who's employing you at the moment. So the formal requirements are there, and the pitfalls that we've usually found in terms of people maybe not having the record right is really just not having enough about that reflection, and maybe focusing on the parts of what they've done and describing a lot of detail about what they've done. So that's our biggest advice, is to remember about the protection across the lifespan, and remember about, you can include lots of things, but the most important part of it is not about what you've done, it's about what it is that you've learned and how that helps you, how that's contributed to your development as a social worker, as a professional social worker. So that's really kind of the big sort of formal parts. And as I say, I can come back to any of those bits in a minute, but I'm going to go back to this page that we were showing you, the different places you can go as an NQSW on the website. So we've had a wee look at the registration requirements there, but we've also got a huge suite of very new resources on professional supervision, and they're written about professional supervision of NQSWs, and this material is about the ways that you can make most effective use of your supervision. So I'm just going to have a quick look in there. And what this is very relevant to think about alongside is there is a huge suite of the same kind of resources that dovetail, that are based for and dedicate, I'm trying to think of the word in, they're written for the supervisors and the managers. So they're slightly different in how they're written because they're different for a different audience, but they're based on the same kind of theoretical perspectives, and they use a lot of very practical case studies and resources that really help generate quality supervision that will that is focused on professional social work. So we're really hoping that they'll be very effective, and as I say, they're very new in terms of their introduction, and they're being published on this website. So what these include is all these different little resources about supervision, and as I say, there's a parallel pack of materials that you can use through the website, or there's a lot of resources that can be downloaded, there are templates, and there is information that can support organisations to run workshops about supervision based on the approaches that are mentioned here. So there are a few of the resources here, and there's even more here. Wellbeing resilience, how to do supervision well through virtual means, and there is also there's a lot, it looks like a lot, but they connect right through. If you open one, it'll naturally lead you to the other and everything, or you can go into the separate ones through this way. But the reason I've kind of scrolled down is to focus on the one that's here toward the end of the list, which is around using peer group reflective practice, because again, this is a new resource that's been created as part of this supervision package of material to really help NQSWs think about how they can use a model that's suggested to help do peer group reflective practice in organisations alongside the other models and the other forms of supervision that are around. So there's a lot of great stuff on supervision in here that's very new, but based on a lot of expertise and experience from other older times as much as the new stuff as well. So we're hoping that will be very helpful, and as I say, we'll be really interested in hearing your thoughts around that. So in the interests of time, because hopefully you're going to have a look at this after the session or when you've next got time, I'm just going back to that NQSW page again. There will also be material here about the transition from student to NQSW in Scotland, and that material's not yet there. That's going to be populated soon. But further down the page, you'll find that what we've got is material to support your learning across a lot of critical practice areas. And these are what we're calling the characteristic practice areas of social work. And they're relevant to the standards or the characteristics that we expect NQSWs to have or be developing in that first year of practice. So they'll be something that will be embedded in the work that's happening in the national project at the moment. But what we've done is separate some learning material across all these areas, just so you can actually have a look at the bits you feel are most relevant, get a bit of an understanding about what's meant by these terms, and also link to some very helpful resources elsewhere. If we've not got material written ourselves, if there's already something there, we don't want to duplicate it, so that we're linking through the pages on that as well. So for example, with the use of knowledge in research and evidence in practice, we link straight away in that material to a fantastic IRIS resource that hopefully you've heard of, which is called Navigating Evidence, and it's for newly qualified social workers. So as soon as you go in there, we're really recommending that. So I'm just going to flick back to the About page, because what we've got is throughout the website, we've got reflective questions weaved through. So lots of the different material, we have noted some reflective questions that might help you consider what's happening in that area for yourself in practice. And all the reflective questions from the different resources that we've included, we've consolidated those into a journal format that you could download and use. It's just a Word document. You can play around with it, you can adapt it for your own use, or as I say, if that's not your style, you can completely ignore it. But it's there in case you want to note some responses to these questions and use that to then think about your continual professional learning. So that's something that's new in there as well, and we'll continue to adapt that over the next period of time as well. You'll also find throughout the site there's a light bulb in various places where there are useful ideas, and we've tried to include lots of them for managers and supervisors and employers as well. And we've also got this next bit, which is things that other newly qualified social workers have shared that they've found very helpful. And again, we're interested, if you want anything to be shared, we can do that. If there's resources or material you find helpful, do please let us know. And we're clearly linking to lots of other things as well. So that's kind of the structure of the website. There's a lot on it. So I'm just going to flick back to the home page, because depending on what device you're on, you're not get a huge flavour of everything that's there at the moment. But we're going to be keeping up to date through news posts about the national project, and the news you can find through the top bar on the website. But equally, I'm just going to scroll down a little bit, try not to do it too fast, so it's not always great on screen when other people are scrolling. But you'll find, there's a bar here with all the different sort of latest news that we're going to be keeping up to date on as well. So I mentioned earlier on, you can search freely through the home page for anything you're looking for. And you can also go into the resources section at the top. It just takes you to the same sort of place that you can search through. And you can search for something, like if we put in something about supervision, you can search as either an employer, you can search as a newly qualified social worker, Or you can also use this filter, which is around the themes or the topics of learning as well. But as I say, you can free search as well. And I think the best way, depending on your style, is have a really good sort of rummage around to start with. And then once you've gotten used to it, if there's something specific you're looking for, you know you can go in and search for it as well. So as I say, it's brand new, as I say, just this summer, and it will be continuing to evolve. And I'm hoping that will help you, whatever your questions are, either go in there and maybe find what you're looking for. And if not, there are lots of key contact details that you can find out the things that you feel are not there yet to help you. So I'm going to stop speaking about it just now and stop sharing the screen. And as I say, Karina and I'll take some questions toward the end of the session. If there's anything in the chat, I'll try and respond to that. So that's the quickest I've ever spoken about that stuff in my life.
That was really doing that. Thanks very much. That was almost like a race through the website, but I do think it gave a wonderful flavour on of all the resources that are available, and I do think this is fantastic because you know, beforehand there was potentially kind of like only little bits available for newly qualified social workers to kind of really kind of find the answers to all the questions. I also love the new approach that you've kind of talked about in really making sure that learning is recognized where it's actually taking place, and not just kind of in only in trainings and you know artificial classroom experiences, but actually you know in practice and in the car whilst you're having you know one of those light bulb moments where you kind of really you know truly reflect upon something, and how that can now be used towards your continued professional learning requirements. So that is fantastic. Thanks very much. I'm sure there will be some questions afterwards about that as well. So if you kind of had anxieties about meeting those kind of requirements, I hope this has helped you to give you a bit of an idea of how you find your way. I mean, literally, as the session says, navigate your way through that, and you will see how that fits very well into the next topic of the session that I will be talking about in regards to self-care and well-being. Lisa, if you could move us on to that one. So just very briefly for all of you who don't know who we are, you know that we are the Scottish Association of Social Workers, and we are part of the BASWA. So you might have heard of the BASWA's Codes of Ethics during your university studies. So we're part of that, the largest professional association for social workers in Scotland. If you could move on to the next one, and slide, Lisa. Yeah, so that quickly just shows you like there are different branches. There's the BASWA Northern Ireland, BASWA Cymru in Wales, BASWA England, and then SASW, the Scottish one, but we're all kind of part of the umbrella organisation of BASWA. And I'm saying that because part of the self-care and well-being I will talk about later is you know that it is really good to kind of connect with others and be part of something. So you know, so I talk about being part of the member of the association as well. Next slide, please. So self-care. Whenever I kind of mention self-care, which is actually really kind of like a passionate topic of mine, I normally kind of get either vivid nodding, yes, really important, or a bit of a rolling of eyes. So it always kind of creates a reaction. But do we actually really care about self-care? And I would kind of like to argue that we don't really. And I really have to say I'm one of them. So I've kind of been decades in social work, and this is one of the topics that I have slightly neglected, and I'm still kind of working on to find, you know, my own really kind of like balance. And but I do think that there is a bit kind of like a wider recognition of how important that is, and I do think is really kind of like a culture change that is needed. We hardly ever admit to ourselves that we are vulnerable as well, because we do look after those who are kind of needing some kind of support, and therefore we feel it's absolutely impossible to admit that we might need some support ourselves, and that we could do with kind of making use of the support that is available. Social workers are absolutely bad at that normally. So and I do kind of want to change that, because it's really important for the quality of our work that we make sure that that we look after ourselves as well. So as we talk about kind of self-reflection, but seem to neglect to think about what it is that we need for ourselves to continue not only to function, but to actually kind of thrive in this role. You know, you've all kind of chosen a fantastic profession, and we just need to make sure that you continue to enjoy that. So next slide, please. So it's important to talk about self-care and well-being, because you know, it really saddens me that the average social worker only lasts 7.5 years after all those years you studied. And yes, you heard correct, that is the actual time that is given at the moment for social workers to last, whilst the GPs, for example, have an average of 25 years. So we need to really kind of think about why is that and how we can change that. You also need to think about the impact that has on the people we work with, you know, like the huge turnover that they have currently to deal with constantly, and have to tell their stories over and over again, because social workers are not continuing in their kind of role. So we all know that social workers are at high risk of burnouts and compassion fatigue. And as I've mentioned, that has a negative impact on the quality and quantity of care we provide to others. It actually has kind of physical impact as well. It can lead to cardiovascular disease and high blood pressure and heart attacks and strokes, but it really impairs on your memory, thinking and judgment in the present. So if you kind of think, I don't have the time to kind of to do that for myself, you really need to think that this is actually investing into others as well, because if you look after yourself and you've got a full cup to kind of pour from, then this will really improve the quality of care that you provide to others. And we really want to kind of, you know, this is a very rewarding profession as well, and we want you to kind of continue to find it rewarding as well, and not just kind of like a dread and a stressful situation. So this is why there's a really kind of new focus on self-care, which I think is really, really important. And you know, that is recognized. So you will kind of find that the forward-thinking employers and managers will kind of make sure that your self-care and well-being is taken into consideration and is seen as something valuable and important. Right, next slide, please. Types of self-care. So we all know that there are different types of self-care. So physical, emotional, social, spiritual, personal, space, financial, and work. They all have potentially different gradings, different weighings for yourself. So you need to kind of see where your own kind of balance is, where are your priorities. It also changes potentially over time. So for example, space, you will find here is something that maybe 2 years ago we wouldn't have considered as that important, but space, or you know, like the where we work and lack of space at times during the pandemic, and then being in lockdown and having everything in your own living room, you know, like the care of your children whilst doing, you know, dealing with the people we work for, and all those kind of same, without those transitions to physically remove yourself from situations has been, you know, a much more important topic. So it's really kind of important to find the balance in all of those, and to pay attention to all of those areas. And as I say, you know, like it's a very individual path. I mean, there is no one fits all approach to self-care. You really need to find your own way, what is important to you. And but maybe, you know, if you want to engage in a wee self-reflection exercise right now, if you look at all those kind of different types of self-care and think about what are the things for you that are good for you in each section. So what are you doing in each particular one of those kind of sections that you're doing already that is working well for you, that is kind of, you know, recharging your energies a little bit, that is kind of under the heading of self-care. And which ones do you do regularly, for example, and which ones are the ones that are a bit off kilter, and which are the ones that you've potentially neglected a little bit. You know, feel free to put them in the chat box, which are the areas that are most neglected, or which are the ones that you kind of feel, I've got that, you know, I'm really taking care of myself. Most importantly, you know, make sure you look after the basic care. I mean, it's sometimes as simple as make sure you sleep well, you know, make sure you have some exercises and make sure you take some times to have your lunch and eat regularly. And I'm saying that because I know I've not always kind of done that in my career as a social worker, sitting at my desk quickly, eating whilst trying to swallow the last bite when still answering the phone to somebody else. This is not self-care, and is maybe something that we can change and put some kind of boundaries around that as well. So, but have a rethink yourselves. As I say, feel free to kind of put in the chat box what are the most neglected areas, which are the ones that you kind of feel need a little bit of attention, and then we can maybe talk about that. Obviously, I'm here to talk about work in particular. Particularly as a association and closely connected, a unionist myself all my life, I really have to see that self-care and well-being needs to be seen in the context of working conditions as well, and cannot be seen without well-being. Is not solely your responsibility. Is also kind of part of being having that kind of care from your managers and from your employers as well. But there are some parts, and even regarding those kind of parts that we can take control of and that we can have an influence upon. Julian already mentioned lots of resources that are available on the SSC website for newly qualified social workers that you can use to start kind of discussions around that with your manager. Like if your supervision is not fulfilling all your needs, that there are those kind of resources available either on the SSC website, or we also BASWA's got a well-being toolkit to kind of use in regards to working conditions and working environment that is available on the BASWA website, and we might kind of put in the link in the chat box for that as well. So those are the things that you can use at least to kind of start those discussions with your manager if that's not happening. Really take some ownership of your own experience as a newly qualified social worker, because it's very important to get it right from the start. I mean, it's hard enough to kind of get it right from the start, but changing course is really difficult. So once you are in those kind of bad habits, it's really kind of difficult to break that cycle. So if you can make sure that you're very conscious about those kind of things and see what can be changed, what can be done about it, right at the start, that will do you well. Okay, if I could move on to the next slide. So compassion satisfaction. Compassion satisfaction is the contentment one experiences from being a helper. And despite the challenges of social work practitioners often say their career is extremely rewarding, and we often talk about the burnout and the compassion fatigue. And so I've put on this slide for compassion satisfaction because I actually do think it's really important to kind of, particularly at the start of the journey, to kind of have that positive mindset that this is actually something that we can keep, rather than gain compassion fatigue. We can work towards keeping joyful in our job and getting something out of that, because at the end of the day that is kind of why we got into that job as well. So but it's this kind of like proactively working towards kind of compassion satisfaction that is something that will kind of keep us going, and it's really kind of useful to keep thinking about and reminding yourself about why is it that you're doing this work, and what aspects of this work give you the most pleasure and satisfaction, or a sense of achievement, and can you increase those areas? So what are the, I talked about the control and seeing that those are there particular projects that you can take on as a newly qualified social worker, starting a group with teenagers, or a group with kind of the elderly, or whatever kind of area you're working on, that kind of something that increases that kind of relationship based practice. Those are the things that we really kind of get things from. So also think about, do you know what you're doing in your work, and why do you see how you're fitting into this bigger picture of social work as well, and what is the bigger picture, really kind of be mindful of that, because if you see how important we are in this clockwork of support for the people who need those kind of services, you know, that is kind of gives a lot of sense of achievement as well, and makes you kind of feel that you're actually doing something that is very valuable to others. Also, you need to think about potentially how do you measure success at work. You know, do you need to kind of reconsider potentially how you measure it, and you might have to kind of put it instead into, you know, bite-sized chunks, and you know, that gives you much more reason to celebrate, and much more reason to kind of be, you know, of achievement, and you know, celebrating those kind of small successes together, maybe with the kind of people that we're working towards, that we're working for. So it's really kind of making sure that we don't just kind of expect complete change within a day, but really kind of being aware of the small successes that we do have and celebrate them. Just kind of overall think of all the aspects, you know, just I'll give you a wee flavour of the things that we can actually take control of, so to drive towards that compassion satisfaction, to kind of keep us motivated, and there are the drivers for that. But for the bigger picture, it's really good to be reminded of what got us into social work. Lisa, if you could put on the next slide. So really, in regards to this driver of kind of keeping us motivated and keeping us happy, is really kind of think about, you know, have those kind of exercises to yourself. So what got us into social work? What is that passion? What is the things that kind of keep us going? Lisa, next slide, please. So those are the things that people have said when I've asked that question before of why we chose social work, and it's really kind of those things. And, you know, have a reread through, and maybe put into the chat box which one of those for you. I mean, maybe it's more than one. It certainly was, you know, to fight injustice, tackle social issues, and campaign for a more equal society is one of the big ones for me. I've always kind of been one for social justice warriors. Like to think, and I do think, you know, social work is quite a political thing. So this is something that keeps me going and keeps the fire burning in my tummy, and it's done me well so far, because yeah, so far I've lasted well over 20 years in frontline social work. So you just need to find the reason that keeps you going, that keeps that fire burning, and keeps that interest going, and do the things that you enjoy. Next slide, please. And just kind of keep that fire as well. So I mean, obviously this is you know, those pictures would keep me going. It might not be the same for you. It might be for completely different reasons, which is absolutely fine. You know, it's really just kind of to show there is not one way. You need to find the things that are driving you, and keep them in mind. And me, you know, helps have a wee poster above your head, and to remind you of what are the things that you enjoy and that got you into social work. Next slide, please. So we can't deny compassion, satisfaction there or not, but we can't deny that we have to deal with stressful situations. It's something that is completely unavoidable in this line of work, and probably in any kind of work for that matter. But there are some active and avoidant coping strategies. As you can see on this slide, there's quite a lot of them, so just have a wee glimpse, and you will probably find that there are to be kind of, yeah, a little bit more, you know, really proactive ways of dealing with the situation, and more avoidant ones. And if I kind of read through that, more or less all of them are part of my toolbox of coping strategies. And which is not wrong, you know, like I do think we need a whole range of coping strategies, and there's not this like one that we can always use. There are kind of like, you know, as human beings, we are complex beings, which is a beautiful thing, and therefore we can certainly make use of a whole kind of complex and wide range of those kind of coping strategies. However, if you find yourself that, you know, for example, denial is your constant and fallback coping strategy, then maybe you want to kind of reconsider that, because that might lead to you know, that kind of negative thinking, and leads more to kind of like the risk of burnout than potentially active coping strategies would be. Having said that, I mean, denial has kind of you know, has had its place in my kind of like coping strategy reservoir, for sure. Sometimes you just need to deny you know, that a problem exists, and sometimes they actually do disappear. I can't really recommend that for all situations, but sometimes it has its place. However, why I'm showing you this slide is to really kind of have a little bit more of a conscious approach to your kind of coping strategies, and a little bit more of awareness of what are the ones that you kind of seem to fall back on more often than others. And if those are the more negative ones, you know, the avoidance strategies, then you might want to kind of think about that and see what you can do about it. I've mentioned the word control a lot of times now, because what we do know, what helps with this kind of feeling of overwhelm and anxiety is that we kind of take a little bit of control and see what are the many things that we can control. And if you take this kind of like more active coping approach, and if you know, seek that support, if you talk about the issue, even for example, venting could be is more the avoidance strategy, and a little bit more negative. It has its place, you know, a quick like vent, oh, this has been a really frustrating visit, you know, fine as well. But if that's all you ever do, then this will kind of be quite a negative approach to kind of things, and you might start to see, you know, like the people you work with in quite a negative way. Whilst if you are actually talking through the potential negative visit you just had with a colleague, and might try to kind of like, you know, analyze it a little bit on why this happened to be a bad visit. You know, maybe it was just your day off, but it might have been just something to do with the person you've kind of visited, and maybe there is something that you know it's worth picking up on and getting those cues. Why is it causing you some discomfort? What is happening in that kind of like visit? So those are the things that, you know, being more active about it and really kind of, you know, taking those kind of steps will help you to stay, you know, curious and more positive in this than just kind of having this kind of venting. I mean, we all kind of know those situations also in offices when also humor, you know, humor can be used in a positive way, but also in a bit of a negative way. So we need to kind of see it's about those kind of conscious choices of when humor is a good thing, you know, laughing with somebody or laughing about somebody, you know. So it's really kind of making sure that we kind of take control and are a bit more conscious in regards to the strategies we use to kind of to cope with difficult situations. Next slide, please. So because there are a lot of things we have control over. You know, I've mentioned already, you know, relationship-based practice is one of the things that got most people into social work. Those are the things that they envisage themselves doing when they're a social worker. And sometimes we need to remind ourselves that this is the case, because particularly if you're in statutory social work, the whole demands on the job will potentially, and the bureaucracy of it will often enough drive you a little bit away from that relationship-based practice. But being mindful of that and remembering that this is the thing that are important to us, and putting the focus on that, and making sure that this is seen by your manager as well, that this is something that you know you want to do in particular, then this helps you to kind of to stay motivated as well. Critical reflection is really important. I've mentioned that in the, you know, coping strategies just before. Being mindful why a visit, for example, was really difficult, and analyze that and what's kind of been happening through that. You can do that individually, just kind of obviously by thinking about it, You can use the supervision again. Remember what Gillian said about the supervision resources that are available. If the supervision that you currently have is just about case management and doesn't leave kind of room for those kind of critical reflection, or is not stipulating it, this is something that you can control. You can have those kind of discussions with your line manager to say this is something that you would like to kind of keep doing. There are the resources that you can print off and show to your supervisor and say this is maybe how I envisage it. You can also take proactive steps. Also on the website that Jillian just showed was kind of like the peer supervision and peer reflection kind of groups that you could start in your work, and those are kind of the ways that can help you to kind of make a critical reflection like a positive experience. Also, person-centered and strengths-based approach helps us to, for the comparison satisfaction rather than going down the negative route. And certainly, and that goes hand in hand with all the kind of former mentioned ways of don't be the gatekeeper of resources, but the source for support for other people, which is really kind of the bit that helps us, getting those rewards out of the job. Mindset of unconditional positive regard, and again, see that how that goes hand in hand with the continuous professional learning, because it's exactly those kind of situations. Often as a newly qualified social worker, we feel overwhelmed, we feel we haven't got a clue, we haven't learned anything at university, and everything is completely new and I know nothing kind of feeling. And the only thing that helps is actually, again, taking control of that and doing that research. I mean, if you are on those kind of visits and you get asked a question, you can say, I don't know, but I will kind of come back and answer it, once I have found out, and then you do the research. So knowing is really kind of power for newly qualified social workers, and nobody expects you to know everything right from the start. So, take that time, do that kind of learning and be mindful of your gaps that they exist, but that's fine. That's why you're at the beginning of this journey, and just kind of rather than being overwhelmed, do something about it, basically. Next slide, please. So ways of staying connected, which is really important. You're not alone in this. There are lots of others out there. And not lots of no longer newly qualified social workers who would still feel the same as you do. So you're really not alone. Just kind of try to kind of connect with others, see that bigger picture. I've mentioned the reflective group supervision. Start or join a community of practice, whether that's your own or the ones SASW, for example, provides for children, families, adults. That's just a platform for reflection, and helps you to kind of hear from other local authorities, for example, how they are doing things. And this is always kind of really helpful. Insist on reflective supervision. I mentioned that before. Attend conferences like today, lectures and events. So I've attended some really good events this week, and it's been really inspiring. And those are the things that throughout my career have really kind of got me going. So make sure, Julie mentioned that this kind of like in practice learning, and that's kind of a lot of learning is happening, but often enough that kind of like inspiration and that bigger thinking happens in bigger events and in connection with others. So therefore, do make use of all the events that are available, either here at BASBA or kind of anywhere else. And then last but not least, that's kind of where I said the association, because it's really good to be part of something, like part of something that group of something bigger. Could also be a special interest group, and or any kind of union, to make you feel that this is you're actually part of a community. You're not just an individual social worker, you are part of a big social work community. And actually it's in Scotland in particular, it's very small, so it's kind of, it makes you feel good to kind of be part of a bigger kind of group. So look into that as well. Next slide, please. So what we can do is as well, obviously we can bring people together. I've already mentioned quite a couple of opportunities that you can join in, and or we can give you a hand to start your own group. Next slide, please. So one of them, for example, is the Student Newly Qualified Social Worker Support and Mentoring Forum. I know a few of you already kind of regulars on that. So for all of you who aren't, please feel free to join us. The next one is next week on Thursday, so it's monthly, and this time it will be on self-directed support actually, so you don't need to kind of come with any prior knowledge. I will do a little bit of an input, but often it's just kind of like exchanging experience, hearing from the others, and having those kind of like advice and tips for each other, and really being like a supportive group. So they're all kind of so far been very friendly and very supportive, and this is yeah, thanks Sarah. I've certainly seen your comment. Yeah, Sarah is one of the ones who are kind of coming to kind of our group. Hope to see you on next week. Next slide, please. I've also mentioned the continued professional learning. BASW obviously is doing a lot in regards to that as well, so keep an eye on those kind of events. Here's a kind of like a collection of all the things that could be of interest that also kind of go towards your continued professional learning requirements. Yeah, do feel free to kind of sign up for any of those. You will find them on the BASW website, and this is a running program, so there will be always something for you of interest. Just keep an eye on that. Next slide. This is one thing I would really like, I know I'm slightly running out of time. I knew this would happen, but this is something I would really like to mention in regards to kind of self-care. So we created this social work professional support service. So it's a peer service. So it's all kind of trained social workers and trained in coaching social workers who provide you with free coaching and listening sessions. So every social worker in Scotland, because it's funded by the Scottish Government, every social worker can make use of those free sessions, and the feedback that we got is absolutely overwhelmingly positive, and you don't need to hit rock bottom to make use of that. So if you have those moments of you're feeling really kind of overwhelmed, you don't know whether you chose the right profession, you don't know anything, basically, those kind of like moments when you really kind of struggle, all those moments when you just kind of think, oh, I would like to plan my next steps, I'm not sure where I'm going with my career, this is the service for you. It's free, so please make use of it. You just need to kind of register, and that's there you go. Choose the coach you like, and don't wait. We all kind of thought we don't need any support until we and then the next day it was all over and we had our burnout. So make sure you're not one of them. Seek support, and because this is really showing that you do care, if you're able to kind of seek support in time before you do hit rock bottom. So please make sure you and spread the word, because people, we all need the support. We just kind of denial, coping strategy, we're all in denial about it. Next slide, please. If there is one more, actually, I don't know. Was that it? Yeah, just kind of stay connected with us. But because of the time, and I'm aware that we did promise that we have some time for questions. So if you could stop the presentation, please, Lisa, and if you all kind of want to switch on your cameras and feel free to ask some questions, use the hand up function, for example, and then we can go back. Maybe you have some questions in regards to the continued professional learning. I don't know whether they have, hi Sarah, whether there have been any questions in the chat box. This is now the time. And if not, Julian, I will be really pleased, because I will just take that as a compliment that we covered everything and all the bases, basically. But how do you feel you're doing in regards to your continued professional learning? Is there something that you've felt a little bit anxious about, and how you're doing in regards to your self-care? You kind of feel you've got that all covered and under control? Would be lovely to hear from you.
I think we're always really interested in hearing good examples of what people are doing. So, but as I say before, gave some follow-up information about how you can contact us out with the session too. So.
Exactly, and Sarah, you've got your hand up.
So I was saying there's nobody else coming in. We have discussions as part of the BASW like Twitter team about like newly qualified social workers and also like being student social workers. And one thing that I get quite jealous of is England has the ASYE year. But I'm just looking at the website and thinking, gosh, that's actually like a really, really good start to be giving us that. So long as our sort of supervisors and managers buy into it as well, because I know for myself it's great learning all the theory, but when you actually go into the practice, it's slightly daunting. So thanks for making that site. It looks really good.
I think, and as I say, it's hopefully going to evolve, and I think that there is a national project that's looking at putting something more concrete in place to support all NQSWs, Sarah. So it won't be the ASYE, but of course that's all under review down south too. But how that's implemented, so there's never, everything can look better elsewhere. But I think it's important we get something that's right for Scotland, and I think there'll be a lot of opportunities this year to keep influence and what the model ends up being for Scotland as well. So keep your eye on the news on that website for being involved in discussion around that. And that involves employers as much as the social workers themselves too, because everybody's critical in the system of supporting people well. So.
And as Julian said, like do get in touch with the SSC if there's something that you kind of feel is missing, and like you heard, for example, from England, this is the resource that they have. Why don't you kind of feed that back to the SSC and see this is maybe something that I would find really useful as well. So it's always good. So you always kind of feel you can't contact somebody, but that's not the case. Do speak up and don't be afraid just because you think, oh, I'm only at this start of my career, and nobody, I don't know, maybe there is something else out there that I just don't know about. I mean, if there is, and you ask that question, then you either get signposted to that resource, which would then be really valuable to you, or you actually kind of start that discussion about it, and maybe kind of you make that available for others as well in the future. So don't be shy about it, really kind of speak up. Your opinion is valued, not just kind of by ourselves, but I know for sure it's valued by SSC as well. So don't be shy and just kind of see, how about this kind of resource is that, or kind of whatever questions you have. Any other questions or any other kind of comments, Sarah? Thanks very much. That was very helpful. Ian, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks very much, and thanks for 2 really good presentations. I'm probably near the other end of my career. I work for the Scottish Government as a professional social work advisor. It was just to say that I did find it really helpful. I'm taking on a piece of work to look at advanced social work practice, and I think the NQSW fits really well. It's the kind of foundation when you qualify. It's the first step, and then I think after that we probably need a more structured career pathway for social workers, and that's the bit of work that I'm undertaking. So it's been really helpful, and yeah, I feel as if I gate crashed a little bit, but thanks for taking the time to give the presentations. It was really helpful.
No, thanks, Ian. Good to hear that somebody else has taken on the next step then, basically, and maybe next time you can provide a session on how that would be, like the transition throughout your whole kind of career as a social worker and advanced social work practice for that. So thanks very much for your kind of comments. So I mean, that's our time up as well. In regards to kind of like getting in touch, if you kind of now feel, oh yeah, that all kind of makes sense, but tomorrow you wake up and think, oh no, I've had this big question and don't know the answer to that. You know now how to kind of contact us, hopefully, and so do feel free to kind of pop that question in, and we will make sure that you get your answers as well. There will also be an email coming up with the slide packs and other kind of like information for you to keep. There will also be a feedback form in that email. So we would always kind of love to hear. So what were the bits that you found helpful? What were the bits that you didn't find? Because obviously we are also like a learning agency and want to learn and develop. So if you could get that feedback, that would be absolutely amazing. And last but not least, I want to thank Gillian for coming in, presenting us with kind of all the information about the SSW resources and the website, and also thanking SSW for sponsoring this event. I hope you all kind of got something to take away from the session, and would love to see you at next week's Student and Newly Qualified Support Forum. I'm always kind of keen to hear about your experiences and how we can kind of exchange all those kind of good advice that you will have as well. And if not, I will just kind of wish you a lovely evening. Enjoy the sunshine, and might see you at another event. Bye bye.
Bye, everybody.